everyone. Welcome back. My name's Christina. I'm the manager at the Pacific Beach Library, and I'm happy for you to join me today for another day of our read aloud together of the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Today is day 37 of our read along together, and yesterday we had two very exciting chapters because so many things that have been slowly coming together. These separate, I've been looking at them as like seeds that have been planted, by the Count of Monte Cristo, that they're starting to sprout, and we're starting to see how they kind of fit together a little bit, what kind of thing they might make together. We're not quite all the way there yet, but it's starting to come together. So today, I'm going to enjoy some Earl Grey tea. As you guys know, it's one of my favorites. Let's see. Oh, it smells so good. Very good, very hot, so I need to let it cool down a little bit, but you'll notice I'm always sipping along during our read-alouds because it gets just to the perfect temp and it's so good. Okay, so I thought we'd talk a little bit about what happened in yesterday's chapters. We read two chapters, chapter 63 and chapter 64. Chapter 63 was the one where, like, boom, a lot of stuff was going on. That was the dinner, and in that one, we had left off the day before with Monsieur de Villefort and Madame Danglars, or the Baroness Danglars, going into dinner together at the Count of Monte Cristo's country home in Auteuil, which, as we know, those two are former lovers. They were observed by Bertuccio, the steward of the Count of Monte Cristo, who confirmed that that was their identity, and also that the child which they illegitimately bore and which they thought had died and that Villefort had tried to bury in the garden had actually been unburied and revived by said Bertuccio, who raised that child as Benedetto. No one else except for the Count of Monte Cristo and Bertuccio know that part of the story, that Benedetto did survive and in fact is being is masquerading as Andrea Cavalcanti at the behest of the Count of Monte Cristo. So we don't yet know exactly how all of those elements are going to come together, but we know that they will, and it's good. So there is some comeuppance coming soon. Alright, so what happened in chapter 63, the dinner, was that Villefort and Madame Danglars went in together to dinner. They were a little uncomfortable about this because they know they're at the house where they used to have their assignations and where she bore the child, their secret love child. Oof, this is so tawdry. And so they go to dinner, and there's a bit about, how wealthy and extravagant the Count of Monte Cristo is. He gets fish shipped in from around the world. This is all stuff that is really amazing at the time because, to have the, it's a display of wealth. And also, as he says, of will, that he chooses to make this thing happen. And so he does things that others might think of as impossible because he wants to, and he will make them happen. And so again, it's showing the character of the Count of Monte Cristo, as well as his willingness to spend his fortune in order to fulfill his desires. What happens then is the conversation turns over the course of dinner. They remark upon, the guests remark upon how the Count of Monte Cristo has made all these wonderful renovations to the house in the mere 1 week or so that he's lived in Paris. And he mentions how, he's redone so much of it, but it seems like he feels like there's something mysterious about the house. And another one of the guests says, oh yes, it does seem like the house is solemn and melancholy. Maybe there's been some tragedy that occurred here years ago. And the Count of Monte Cristo encourages this train of conversation. And eventually he leads them to look around the house, and he shows them that there's a bedroom, which is the only one he's left undecorated. It is the one that retains the old look of the house. And of course, we assume it's the room where Madame Danglars bore that child, which she believed died. And from which, Monsieur Villefort walked away carrying that dead child. Not dead, became Benedetto, And it's very emotionally trying for she and for he as they're hearing the speculation of the Count and the other guests as they're talking about this. Then the Count of Monte Cristo mentions, and I'm sure there actually is some mystery because I found, when we were digging up in the garden in the back, we found the metal workings that were around what was like a wooden casket, and that this little casket had a dead child in it. Da, da, da. And so he was saying like it had the bones of the remains of this dead child, and he even speculated that maybe the child was buried alive because it had never been used as a cemetery, so why would they have buried a child, a child of a family that they cared about, that they knew had passed away. Why would they bury it there? It must be a secret, hidden thing, and so perhaps that child was alive and it was buried. And so Monte Cristo just sort of throws this out there. Villefort is, upset, visibly, you can tell he's upset. He's trying to hold it in. Madame Danglars starts fainting and just, oh my goodness, this is, she's quite disturbed by the tenor of the conversation. And so they stop talking about the whole mystery of the house. Madame de Villefort brings out her smelling salts, which are actually, now she's using a liquid, using the recipe that the Count of Monte Cristo had given her, the one that a few drops, a drop or two will revive you, but too much can kill you. So she uses that to revive Madame Danglars. After the dinner party, they all leave, and as Andrea Cavalcanti is leaving, he is approached by a beggar. And this beggar is quite familiar with him, and we eventually realize that the beggar is Caderousse, the old neighbor, the tailor who had lived next to old Edmond Dantès' father. And he is the one who told Dantès, after he had escaped from prison and was disguising himself as the Abbé Busoni, he told him that, it had actually been Fernand and Danglars who had betrayed him. And he is also the one that when Edmond Dantès gave, or in the guise of Abbé Busoni, gave a diamond to Caderousse in order to thank him for this information and perhaps give him a chance to have a new life. Caderousse then turned around and killed the jeweler who was going to purchase it from him. So we see Caderousse yet again. Now he is poorly dressed, he's a beggar, and somehow he knows Andrea from before when he was going as Benedetto. And so he tells Benedetto that he knows him, that he's sure he doesn't want anyone to know about his past. And so Benedetto eventually agrees that he will pay Caderousse, some money each month from his stipend in order basically to buy his silence. And so Andrea / Benedetto, I'm not sure which is a better way to refer to him, he brings Caderousse into Paris, drops him off, and so we know there's going to be some more trouble brewing in that area too. All right, so that brings us up to where we are for today. Today we're going to learn a bit more about the Danglars family. Our first chapter is called A Conjugal Scene, and just in case anyone is also only knowing the word conjugal from conjugal visits, looked it up. Conjugal just means of or relating to marriage. So, a conjugal scene. A scene between marriage partners. All right, chapter 65. It's very G-rated, don't worry. At the Place Louis XV, the three young people separated. That is to say, Morel went to the boulevards, Chateau Renaud to the Pont de la Révolution, and Debray to the quay. Most probably, Morel and Chateau Renaud returned to their domestic hearths, as they say in the gallery of the chamber in well-turned speeches, and in the theatre of the Rue Richelieu in well-written pieces. But it was not the case with Debray. When he reached the wicket of the Louvre, he turned to the left, galloped across the Carrousel, passed through the Rue Saint-Roch, and issuing from the Rue de la Michaudière, he arrived at Monsieur Danglars' door, just at the same time that Villefort's landau, after having deposited him and his wife at the Faubourg Saint-Honoré, stopped to leave the Baroness at her own house. Debray, with the air of a man familiar with the house, entered first into the court, threw his bridle into the hands of a footman, and returned to the door to receive Madame Danglars, to whom he offered his arm to conduct her to her apartments. The gate once closed, and Debray and the Baroness alone in the court, he asked, "What was the matter with you, Hermine? And why were you so affected at that story, or rather fable, which the Count related?" "Because I have been in such shocking spirits all the evening, my friend," said the Baroness. "No, Hermine." I think I'm going to change her to Hermine. "No, Hermine," replied Debray. "You cannot make me believe that. On the contrary, you were in excellent spirits when you arrived at the Count's. Monsieur Danglars was disagreeable, certainly, but I know how much you care for his ill humor. Someone has vexed you. I will allow no one to annoy you." "You are deceived, Lucienne, I assure you," replied Madame Danglars, "and what I have told you is really the case, added to the ill humor you remarked, but which I did not think it worth while to allude to." It was evident that Madame Danglars was suffering from that nervous irritability which women frequently cannot account for even to themselves, or that, as Debray had guessed, she had experienced some secret agitation that she would not acknowledge to anyone. Being a man who knew that the former of these symptoms was one of the inherent penalties of womanhood, he did not then press his inquiries, but waited for a more appropriate opportunity when he should again interrogate her, or receive an avowal proprio motu. At the door of her apartment, the Baroness met Mademoiselle Cornélie, her confidential maid. "What is my daughter doing?" asked Madame Danglars. "She practiced all the evening and then went to bed," replied Mademoiselle Cornélie. "Yes, I think I hear her piano." "It is Mademoiselle Louise d'Armilly, who is playing while Mademoiselle Danglars is in bed." "Well," said Madame Danglars, "come and undress me." They entered the bedroom. Debray stretched himself upon a large couch, and Madame Danglars passed into her dressing-room with Mademoiselle Cornélie. "My dear Monsieur Lucien," said Madame Danglars through the door, "you are always complaining that Eugenie will not address a word to you." "Madame," said Lucien, playing with the little dog, who, recognizing him as a friend of the house, expected to be caressed. "I am not the only one who makes similar complaints. I think I heard Morcerf say that he could not extract a word from his betrothed." "True," said Madame Danglars, "yet I think this will all pass off, and that you will one day see her enter your study." "My study?" "At least that of the minister." "Why so?" "To ask for an engagement at the opera. Really, I never saw such an infatuation for music. It is quite ridiculous for a young lady of fashion." Debray smiled. "Well," said he, "let her come, with your consent and that of the Baron, and we will try and give her an engagement, though we are very poor to pay such talent as hers." "Go, Cornélie," said Madame Danglars. "I do not require you any longer." Cornélie obeyed, and the next minute Madame Danglars left her room in a charming loose dress, and came and sat down close to Debray. Then she began thoughtfully to caress the little spaniel. Lucien looked at her for a moment in silence. "Come, Hermine," he said after a short time, "answer candidly. Something vexes you, is it not so?" "Nothing," answered the Baroness. And yet, as she could scarcely breathe, she rose and went towards a looking-glass. "I am frightful tonight," she said. Debray rose, smiling, and was about to contradict the Baroness upon this latter point when the door opened suddenly. Monsieur Danglars appeared. Debray reseated himself. At the noise of the door, Madame Danglars turned round and looked upon her husband with an astonishment she took no trouble to conceal. "Good evening, madame," said the banker. "Good evening, Monsieur Debray." Perhaps the Baroness thought this unexpected visit signified a desire to make up for the sharp words he had uttered during the day. Assuming a dignified air, she turned round to Debray, without answering her husband. "Read me something, Monsieur Debray," she said. Debray, who was slightly disturbed at this visit, recovered himself when he saw the calmness of the Baroness, and took up a book marked by a mother-of-pearl knife inlaid with gold. "Excuse me," said the banker, "but you will tire yourself, Baroness, by such late hours, and Monsieur Debray lives some distance from here." Debray was petrified, not only to hear Danglars speak so calmly and politely, but because it was apparent that beneath outward politeness there really lurked a determined spirit of opposition to anything his wife might wish to do. The Baroness was also surprised, and showed her astonishment by a look which would doubtless have had some effect upon her husband if he had not been intently occupied with the paper, where he was looking to see the closing stock quotations. The result was that the proud look entirely failed of its purpose. "Monsieur Lucien," said the Baroness, "I assure you I have no desire to sleep, and that I have 1,000 things to tell you this evening, which you must listen to, even though you slept while hearing me." "I am at your service, madame," replied Lucien coldly. "My dear Monsieur Debray," said the banker, "do not kill yourself tonight listening to the follies of Madame Danglars, for you can hear them as well tomorrow. But I claim tonight, and will devote it, if you will allow me, to talk over some serious matters with my wife." This time the blow was so well aimed and hit so directly that Lucien and the Baroness were staggered, and they interrogated each other with their eyes, as if to seek help against this aggression. But the irresistible will of the master of the house prevailed, and the husband was victorious. "Do not think I wish to turn you out, my dear Debray," continued Danglars. "Oh, no, not at all. An unexpected occurrence forces me to ask my wife to have a little conversation with me. It is so rarely I make such a request, I am sure you cannot grudge it to me." Debray muttered something, bowed, and went out, knocking himself against the edge of the door, like Nathan in Athalie. "It is extraordinary," he said when the door was closed behind him, "how easily these husbands, whom we ridicule, gain an advantage over us." Lucien having left, Danglars took his place on the sofa, closed the open book, and placing himself in a dreadfully dictatorial attitude, he began playing with the dog. But the animal, not liking him as well as Debray, and attempting to bite him, Danglars seized him by the skin of his neck and threw him upon a couch on the other side of the room. The animal uttered a cry during the transit, but, arrived at its destination, it crouched behind the cushions, and, stupefied at such unusual treatment, remained silent and motionless. "Do you know, sir," asked the Baroness, "that you are improving? Generally you are only rude, but tonight you are brutal." "It is because I am in a worse humor than usual," replied Danglars. Hermine looked at the banker with supreme disdain. These glances frequently exasperated the pride of Danglars, but this evening he took no notice of them. "And what have I to do with your ill humor?" said the Baroness, irritated at the impassibility of her husband. "Do these things concern me? Keep your ill humor at home in your money boxes, or, since you have clerks whom you pay, vent it upon them." "Not so," replied Danglars. "Your advice is wrong, so I shall not follow it. My money boxes are my Pactolus, as, I think, Monsieur de Moustier says, and I will not retard its course or disturb its calm. My clerks are honest men who earn my fortune, whom I pay much below their deserts, if I may value them according to what they bring in. Therefore I shall not get into a passion with them. Those with whom I will be in a passion are those who eat my dinners, mount my horses, and exhaust my fortune." "And pray, who are the persons who exhaust your fortune? Explain yourself more clearly, I beg, sir." "Oh, make yourself easy. I am not speaking riddles, and you will soon know what I mean. The people who exhaust my fortune are those who draw out 700,000 francs in the course of an hour." "I do not understand you, sir," said the Baroness, trying to disguise the agitation of her voice and the flush of her face. "You understand me perfectly, on the contrary," said Danglars. "But if you persist, I will tell you that I have just lost 700,000 francs upon the Spanish loan." "And pray," asked the Baroness, "am I responsible for this loss?" "Why not?" "Is it my fault you have lost 700,000 francs?" "Certainly it is not mine." "Once and for all, sir," replied the Baroness sharply, "I tell you I will not hear cash named. It is a style of language I never heard in the house of my parents or in that of my first husband." "Oh, I can well believe that, for neither of them was worth a penny." "The better reason for my not being conversant with the slang of the bank, which is here dinning in my ears from morning to night, that noise of jingling crowns, which are constantly being counted and recounted, is odious to me. I only know one thing I dislike more, which is the sound of your voice." "Really," said Danglars. "Well, this surprises me, for I thought you took the liveliest interest in all my affairs." "I? What could put such an idea into your head?" "Yourself." "Ah? What next?" "Most assuredly." "I should like to know upon what occasion." "Oh, mon Dieu, that is very easily done. Last February you were the first who told me of the Haitian funds. You had dreamt that a ship had entered the harbor at Le Havre, that this ship brought news that a payment we had looked upon as lost was going to be made. I know how clear-sighted your dreams are. I therefore purchased immediately as many shares as I could of the Haitian debt, and I gained 400,000 francs of it. 400,000 francs by it, of which 100,000 have been honestly paid to you. You spent it as you pleased. That was your business. In March, there was a question about a grant to a railway. 3 companies presented themselves, each offering equal securities. You told me that your instinct, and although you pretend to know nothing about speculations, I think on the contrary that your comprehension is very clear upon certain affairs. Well, you told me that your... Sorry about that. I think a call was trying to come through. Let's go back a second. I think on the contrary that your comprehension is very clear upon certain affairs. Well, you told me that your instinct led you to believe the grant would be given to the company called the Southern. I bought 2/3 of the shares of that company. As you had foreseen, the shares trebled in value, and I picked up 1,000,000, from which 250,000 francs were paid to you for pin money. How have you spent the 250,000 francs? It is no business of mine. When are you coming to the point? Cried the Baroness, shivering with anger and impatience. Patience, madame, I am coming to it. That's fortunate. In April, you went to dine at the minister's. You heard a private conversation respecting Spanish affairs, on the expulsion of Don Carlos. I bought some Spanish shares. The expulsion took place, and I pocketed 600,000 francs the day Charles V repassed the Bidassoa. Of these 600,000 francs, you took 50,000 crowns. They were yours. You disposed of them according to your fancy, and I asked no questions. But it is not the less true that you have this year received 500,000 livres. Well, sir, and what then? Yes. It was just after this that you spoiled everything. Really, your manner of speaking, it expresses my meaning, and that is all I want. Well, 3 days after that, you talked politics with Monsieur Debray, and you fancied from his words that Don Carlos had returned to Spain. Well, I sold my shares. The news got out, and I no longer sold. I gave them away. Next day I find the news was false, and by this false report I have lost 700,000 francs. Well, since I gave you 1/4 of my gains, I think you owe me 1/4 of my losses. The 1/4 of 700,000 francs is 175 francs. 175,000 francs. What you say is absurd, and I cannot see why Monsieur Debray's name is mixed up in this affair. Because if you do not possess the 175,000 francs I reclaim, you must have lent them to your friends, and Monsieur Debray is one of your friends. For shame! Exclaimed the Baroness. Oh, let us have no gestures, no screams, no modern drama, or you will oblige me to tell you that I see Debray leave here, pocketing the whole of the 500,000 livres you have handed over to him this year, while he smiles to himself, saying that he has found what the most skillful players have never discovered, that is, a roulette where he wins without playing and is no loser when he loses. The Baroness became enraged. Wretch! She cried. Will you dare to tell me that you did not know what you now reproach me with? I do not say that I did know it, and I do not say that I did not know it. I merely tell you to look into my conduct during the last 4 years that we have ceased to be husband and wife, and see whether it has not always been consistent. Some time after our rupture, you wished to study music under the celebrated baritone who made such a successful appearance at the Théâtre Italien. At the same time, I felt inclined to learn dancing of the danseuse who acquired such a reputation in London. This cost me, on your account and mine, 100,000 francs. I said nothing, for we must have peace in the house, and 100,000 francs for a lady and gentleman to be properly instructed in music and dancing are not too much. Well, you soon became tired of singing, and you take a fancy to study diplomacy with the minister's secretary. You understand, it signifies nothing to me so long as you pay for your lessons out of your own cash-box. But today I find you are drawing on mine, and that your apprenticeship may cost me 700,000 francs per month. Stop there, madame, for this cannot last. Either the diplomat must give his lessons gratis, and I will tolerate him, or he must never set his foot again in my house. Do you understand, madame?" "Oh, this is too much," cried Hermine, choking. "You are worse than despicable." "But," continued Danglars, "I find you did not even pause there." "Insults!" "You are right. Let us leave these facts alone and reason coolly. I have never interfered in your affairs excepting for your good. Treat me in the same way. You say you have nothing to do with my cash box? Be it so. Do as you like with your own, but do not fill or empty mine. Besides, how do I know that this was not a political trick, that the minister, enraged at seeing me in the opposition and jealous of the popular sympathy I excite, has not concerted with Monsieur Debray to ruin me? A probable thing. Why not? Who ever heard of such an occurrence as this? A false telegraphic dispatch? It is almost impossible for wrong signals to be made as they were in the last 2 telegrams. It was done on purpose for me. I am sure of it." "Sir," said the Baroness humbly, "are you not aware that the man employed there was dismissed, that they talked of going to law with him? The orders were issued to arrest him, and that this order would have been put into execution if he had not escaped by flight, which proves that he was either mad or guilty? It was a mistake." "Yes, which make fools laugh, which caused the minister to have a sleepless night, which has caused the minister's secretaries to blacken several sheets of paper, but which has cost me 700,000 francs. "But, sir," said Hermine suddenly, "if all this is, as you say, caused by Monsieur Debray, why, instead of going direct to him, do you come and tell me of it? Why, to accuse the man, do you address the woman?" "Do I know Monsieur Debray? Do I wish to know him? Do I wish to know that he gives advice? Do I wish to follow it? Do I speculate? No, you do all this, not I." "Still, it seems to me that, as you profit by it—" Danglars shrugged his shoulders. "Foolish creature!" he exclaimed. "Women fancy they have talent because they have managed 2 or 3 intrigues without being the talk of Paris. But know that if you had even hidden your irregularities from your husband, who has but the commencement of the art, for generally husbands will not see, you would then have been but a faint imitation of most of your friends among the women of the world. But it has not been so with me. I see, and always have seen during the last 16 years. You may perhaps have hidden a thought, but not a step, not an action, not a fault has escaped me while you flattered yourself upon your while you flattered yourself upon your address and firmly believed you had deceived me. What has been the result? That thanks to my pretended ignorance, there is none of your friends, from Monsieur de Villefort to Monsieur Debray, who has not trembled before me. There is not one who has not treated me as the master of the house, the only title I desire with respect to you. There is not one, in fact, who would have dared to speak to me, who would have dared to speak of me as I have spoken of them this day. I will allow you to make me hateful, but I will prevent your rendering me ridiculous, and above all, I forbid you to ruin me." The Baroness had been tolerably composed until the name of Villefort had been pronounced, but then she became pale, and, rising as if touched by a spring, she stretched out her hands as though conjuring an apparition. She then took 2 or 3 steps towards her husband, as though to tear the secret from him, of which he was ignorant, or which he withheld from some odious calculation, odious as all his calculations were. "Monsieur de Villefort? What do you mean?" "I mean that Monsieur de Nargonne, your first husband, being neither a philosopher nor a banker, or perhaps being both, and seeing there was nothing to be got out of a king's attorney, died of grief or anger at finding, after an absence of 9 months, that you had been enceinte. That you had been enceinte 6. I am brutal. I not only allow it, but boast of it. It is one of the reasons of my success in commercial business. Why did he kill himself instead of you? Because he had no cash to save. My life belongs to my cash. Monsieur Debray has made me lose 700,000 francs. Let him bear his share of the loss, and we will go on as before. If not, let him become bankrupt for the 250,000 livres and do as all bankrupts do, disappear. He is a charming fellow, I allow, when his news is correct. But when it is not, there are 50 others in the world who would do better than he. Madame Danglars was rooted to the spot. She made a violent effort to reply to this last attack, but she fell upon a chair, thinking of Villefort, of the dinner scene, of the strange series of misfortunes which had taken place in her house during the last few days, and changed the usual calm of her establishment to a scene of scandalous debate. Danglars did not even look at her, although she did her best to faint. He shut the bedroom door after him without adding another word, and returned to his apartments, and when Madame Danglars recovered from her half-fainting condition, she could almost believe that she had had a disagreeable dream. And now chapter 66, Matrimonial Prospects. The day following this scene, at the hour Debray usually chose to pay a visit to Madame Danglars on his way to the office, his coupé did not appear. At this time, that is about 12:30, Madame Danglars ordered her carriage and went out. Danglars, hidden behind a curtain, watched the departure he had been waiting for. He gave orders that he should be informed as soon as Madame Danglars appeared, but at 2:00 she had not returned. He then called for his horses, drove to the chamber, and inscribed his name to speak against the budget. From 12 to 2:00, Danglars had remained in his study, unsealing his dispatches and becoming more and more sad every minute, heaping figure upon figure, and receiving, among other visits, one from Major Cavalcanti, who, as stiff and exact as ever, presented himself precisely at the hour named the night before, to terminate his business with the banker. On leaving the chamber, Danglars, who had shown violent marks of agitation during the sitting and been more bitter than ever against the ministry, re-entered his carriage and told the coachman to drive to the Avenue des Champs-Élysées, number 30. Monte Cristo was at home, only he was engaged with someone and begged Danglars to wait for a moment in the drawing-room. While the banker was waiting in the anteroom, the door opened, and a man dressed as an abbé, and doubtless more familiar with the house than he was, came in, and instead of waiting merely bowed, passed on to the further apartments, and disappeared. A minute after the door by which the priest had entered reopened, and Monte Cristo appeared. "Pardon me," said he, "my dear Baron, but one of my friends, the Abbé Busoni, whom you perhaps saw pass, has just arrived in Paris. Not having seen him for a long time, I could not make up my mind to leave him sooner, so I hope this will be sufficient reason for my having made you wait." "Nay," said Danglars, "it is my fault. I have chosen my visit at a wrong time, and I will retire." "Not at all. On the contrary, be seated. But what is the matter with you? You look careworn, really. You alarm me. Melancholy in a capitalist, like the appearance of a comet, presages some misfortune to the world." "I have been in ill luck for several days," said Danglars, "and I have heard nothing but bad news." "Ah, indeed," said Monte Cristo. "Have you had another fall at the Bourse?" "No, I am safe for a few days at least. I am only annoyed about a bankrupt of Trieste." "Really? Does it happen to be Jacopo Manfredi?" "Exactly so. Imagine a man who has transacted business with me for I don't know how long, to the amount of 800,000 or 900,000 francs during the year. Never a mistake or delay. A fellow who paid like a prince. Well, I was 1,000,000 in advance with him, and now my fine Jacopo Manfredi suspends payment." "Really? Then you do not speculate?" Sorry, I went 2 pages on accident. "He suspends payment. Really? It is an unheard of fatality. I draw upon him for 600,000 francs, my bills are returned unpaid, and more than that, I hold bills of exchange signed by him to the value of 400,000 francs, payable at his correspondence in Paris at the end of this month. Today is the 30th. I present them, but my correspondent has disappeared. This, with my Spanish affairs, made a pretty end to the month. Then you really lost by that affair in Spain? Yes. Only 700,000 francs out of my cash box. Nothing more. Why, how could you make such a mistake? Such an old stager. Oh, it is all my wife's fault. She dreamed Don Carlos had returned to Spain. She believes in dreams. It is magnetism, she says, and when she dreams a thing, it is sure to happen, she assures me. On this conviction, I allow her to speculate. She having her bank and her stockbroker, she speculated and lost. It is true, she speculates with her own money, not mine. Nevertheless, you can understand that when 700,000 francs leave the wife's pocket, the husband always finds it out. But do you mean to say you have not heard of this? Why, the thing has made a tremendous noise. Yes, I have heard it spoken of, but I did not know the details, and then no one can be more ignorant than I am of the affairs in the Bourse. Then you do not speculate? I? How could I speculate when I already have so much trouble in regulating my income? I should be obliged, besides my steward, to keep a clerk and a boy. But, touching these Spanish affairs, I think that the Baroness did not dream the whole of the Don Carlos matter. The papers said something about it, did they not? Then you believe the papers? I? Not the least in the world, only I fancy that the honest messenger was an exception to the rule, and that it only announced telegraphic dispatches. Well, that's what puzzles me, replied Danglars. The news of the return of Don Carlos was brought by telegraph. So that, said Monte Cristo, you have lost nearly 1,700,000 francs this month. Not nearly indeed. That is exactly my loss. Diable, said Monte Cristo compassionately. It is a hard blow for a third-rate fortune. Third-rate, said Danglars, rather humble. What do you mean by that? Certainly, continued Monte Cristo, I make 3 assortments in fortune. First-rate, second-rate, and third-rate fortunes. I call those first-rate which are composed of treasures one possesses under one's hand, such as mines, lands, and funded property, in such states as France, Austria, and England, provided these treasures and property form a total of about 100 millions. I call those second-rate fortunes that are gained by manufacturing enterprises, joint stock companies, viceroyalties, and principalities, not drawing more than 1.5 million francs, the whole forming a capital of about 50 millions. Finally, I call those third-rate fortunes. Not drawing more than 1.5 million francs, the whole forming a capital of about 50 millions. There we go. Finally, I call those third-rate fortunes, which are composed of a fluctuating capital, dependent upon the will of others or upon chances which a bankruptcy involves or a false telegraph shakes, such as banks, speculations of the day, in fact, all operations under the influence of greater or less mischances, the whole bringing in a real or fictitious capital of about 15 millions. I think this is about your position, is it not? Confound it, yes, replied Danglars. The result, then, of 6 more such months as this would be to reduce the third-rate house to despair. Oh, said Danglars, becoming very pale, how you are running on! Let us imagine 7 such months, continued Monte Cristo in the same tone. Tell me, have you ever thought that 7 times 1.7 million francs makes nearly 12 millions? No, you have not. Well, you are right, for if you indulged in such reflections, you would never risk your principle, which is to the speculator what the skin is to civilized man. We have our clothes, some more splendid than others. This is our credit. But when a man dies, he has only his skin. In the same way, on retiring from business, you have nothing but your real principal of about 5 or 6 millions at the most. For third-rate fortunes are never more than a fourth of what they appear to be. Like the locomotive on a railway, the size of which is magnified by the smoke and steam surrounding it. Well, out of the 5 or 6 millions which form your real capital, you have just lost nearly 2 millions, which must, of course, in the same degree, diminish your credit and fictitious fortune. To follow out my simile, your skin has been opened by bleeding, and this, if repeated 3 or 4 times, will cause death. So pay attention to it, my dear Monsieur Danglars. Do you want money? Do you wish me to lend you some?" "What a bad calculator you are!" exclaimed Danglars, calling to his assistance all his philosophy and dissimulation. "I have made money at the same time by speculations which have succeeded. I have made up the loss of blood by nutrition. I lost a battle in Spain. I have been defeated in Trieste. But my naval army in India will have taken some galleons, and my Mexican pioneers will have discovered some mine." "Very good, very good. But the wound remains, and will reopen at the first loss." "No, for I am only embarked in certainties," replied Danglars, with the air of a mountebank sounding his own praises. "To involve me, 3 governments must crumble to dust." "Well, such things have been." "That there should be a famine." "Recollect the 7 fat and the 7 lean kine." "Or that the sea should become dry as in the days of Pharaoh, and even then my vessels would become caravans." "So much the better. I congratulate you, my dear Monsieur Danglars," said Monte Cristo. "I see I was deceived, and that you belong to the class of second-rate fortunes." "I think I may aspire to that honor," said Danglars with a smile, which reminded Monte Cristo of the sickly moons which bad artists are so fond of daubing into their pictures of ruins. "But while we are speaking of business," Danglars added, pleased to find an opportunity of changing the subject, "tell me what I am to do for Monsieur Cavalcanti." "Give him money, if he is recommended to you, and the recommendation seems good." "Excellent. He presented himself this morning with a bond of 40,000 francs, payable at sight, on you, signed by Busoni, and returned by you to me with your endorsement. Of course, I immediately counted him over the 40 banknotes." Monte Cristo nodded his head in token of assent. "But that is not all," continued Danglars. "He has opened an account with my house for his son." "May I ask how much he allows the young man?" 5,000 francs per month." 60,000 francs per year. I thought I was right in believing that Cavalcanti to be a stingy person. How can a young man live upon 5,000 francs a month? But you understand that if the young man should want a few thousands more, do not advance it. The father will never repay it. You do not know these ultramontane millionaires. They are regular misers. And by whom were they recommended to you? Oh, by the house of Fenzi, one of the best in Florence. I do not mean to say you will lose, but nevertheless, mind you hold to the terms of the agreement. Would you not trust the Cavalcanti? I? Oh, I would advance 10 millions on his signature. I was only speaking in reference to the second-rate fortunes we were mentioning just now. And with all this, how unassuming he is! I should never have taken him for anything more than a mere major. And you would have flattered him, for certainly, as you say, he has no manner. The first time I saw him, he appeared to me like an old lieutenant who had grown mouldy under his epaulettes. But all the Italians are the same. They are like old Jews when they are not glittering in oriental splendor. The young man is better, said Danglars. Yes, a little nervous perhaps, but upon the whole he appeared tolerable. I was uneasy about him. Why? Because you met him at my house, just after his introduction into the world, as they told me. He has been traveling with a very severe tutor and had never been to Paris before. Ah, I believe noblemen marry amongst themselves, do they not? Asked Danglars carelessly. They like to unite their fortunes? It is usual, certainly, but Cavalcanti is an original who does nothing like other people. I cannot help thinking that he has brought his son to France to choose a wife. Do you think so? I am sure of it. And you have heard his fortune mentioned? Nothing else was talked of, only some said he was worth millions, and others that he did not possess a farthing. And what is your opinion? I ought not to influence you because it is only my own personal impression. Well, and it is that? My opinion is that all these old podestas, these ancient condottieri, for the Cavalcanti have commanded armies and governed provinces. My opinion, I say, is that they have buried their millions in corners, the secret of which they have transmitted only to their eldest sons, who have done the same from generation to generation, and the proof of this is seen in their yellow and dry appearance, like the florins of the Republic, which, from being constantly gazed upon, have become reflected in them. Certainly, said Danglars, and this is further supported by the fact of their not possessing an inch of land. Very little, at least. I know of none which Cavalcanti possesses, excepting his palace in Lucca. Ah, he has a palace, said Danglars, laughing. Come, that is something. Yes, and more than that, he lets it to the Minister of Finance while he lives in a simple house. Oh, as I told you before, I think the old fellow is very close. Come, you do not flatter him. I scarcely know him. I think I have seen him 3 times in my life. All I know relating to him is through Busoni and himself. He was telling me this morning that, tired of letting his property lie dormant in Italy, which is a dead nation, he wished to find a method, either in France or England, of multiplying his millions. But remember that though I place great confidence in Busoni, I am not responsible for this. Never mind, accept my thanks for the client you have sent me. It is a fine name to inscribe on my ledgers, and my cashier was quite proud of it when I explained to him who the Cavalcanti were. By the way, this is merely a simple question. When this sort of people marry their sons, do they give them any fortune? Oh, that depends upon circumstances. I know an Italian prince, rich as a gold mine, one of the noblest families in Tuscany, who, when his sons married according to his wish, gave them millions, and when they married according to his wish, gave them millions, and when they married against his consent, merely allowed them 30 crowns a month. Should Andrea marry according to his father's views, he will perhaps give him 1, 2, or 3 millions. For example, supposing it were the daughter of a banker, he might take an interest in the house of the father-in-law of his son. Then again, if he disliked his choice, the major takes the key, double locks his coffer, and Master Andrea would be obliged to live like the sons of a Parisian family, by shuffling cards or rattling the dice. Ah, that boy will find out some Bavarian or Peruvian princess. He will want a crown, an El Dorado, and Potosi. No, these grand lords on the other side of the Alps frequently marry into plain families. Like Jupiter, they like to cross the race. But do you wish to marry Andrea, my dear Monsieur Danglars, that you are asking so many questions? Ma foi, said Danglars, it would not be a bad speculation, I fancy, and you know I am a speculator. You are not thinking of Mademoiselle Danglars, I hope? You would not like poor Andrea to have his throat cut by Albert. Albert, repeated Danglars, shrugging his shoulders. Ah, well, he would care very little about it, I think. But he is betrothed to your daughter, I believe? Well, Monsieur de Morcerf and I have talked about this marriage, but Madame de Morcerf and Albert... You do not mean to say that it would not be a good match? Indeed, I imagine that Mademoiselle Danglars is as good as Monsieur de Morcerf. Mademoiselle Danglars' fortune will be great, no doubt, especially if the telegraph should not make any more mistakes. Oh, I do not mean her fortune only, but tell me. What? Why did you not invite Monsieur and Madame de Morcerf to your dinner? I did so, but he excused himself on account of Madame de Morcerf being obliged to go to Dieppe for the benefit of sea air. Yes, yes, said Danglars, laughing. It would do her a great deal of good. Why so? Because it is the air she always breathed in her youth. Monte Cristo took no notice of this ill-natured remark. But still, if Albert be not so rich as Mademoiselle Danglars, said the Count, you must allow that he has a fine name. So he has, but I like mine as well. Certainly your name is popular, and does honor to the title they have adorned it with, but you are too intelligent not to know that according to a prejudice, too firmly rooted to be exterminated, a nobility which dates back 5 centuries is worth more than one that can only reckon 20 years. And for this very reason, said Danglars with a smile, which he tried to make sardonic, I prefer Monsieur Andrea Cavalcanti to Monsieur Albert de Morcerf. Still, I should not think the Morcerfs would yield to the Cavalcanti. The Morcerfs? Stay, my dear Count, said Danglars. You are a man of the world, are you not? I think so. And you understand heraldry? A little. Well, look at my coat of arms. It is worth more than Morcerf's. Why so? Because though I am not a baron by birth, my real name is, at least, Danglars. Well, what then? Well, what then? Well, his name is not Morcerf. How? Not Morcerf? Not the least in the world. Go on. I have been made a baron, so that I actually am one. He made himself a count, so that he is not one at all. Impossible. Listen, my dear Count. Monsieur de Morcerf has been my friend, or rather my acquaintance, during the last 30 years. You know I have made the most of my arms, though I never forgot my origin. A proof of great humility, or great pride, said Monte Cristo. Well, when I was a clerk, Morcerf was a mere fisherman, and then he was called Fernand. Only Fernand? Fernand Mondego. You are sure? Pardieu, I have bought enough fish of him to know his name. Then why did you think of giving your daughter to him? Because Fernand and Danglars, being both parvenus, both having become noble, both rich, are about equal in worth, excepting that there have been certain things mentioned of him that were never said of me. What? Oh, nothing. Ah, yes. What you tell me recalls to mind something about the name of Fernand Mondego. I have heard that name in Greece. In conjunction with the affairs of Ali Pasha? Exactly so. This is the mystery, said Danglars. I acknowledge I would have given anything to find it out. It would be very easy if you much wished it? How so? Perhaps you have some correspondent in Greece? I should think so. At Yanina? Everywhere. Well, write to your correspondent in Yanina and ask him what part was played by a Frenchman named Fernand Mondego in the catastrophe of Ali Tepelini. You are right, exclaimed Danglars, rising quickly. I will write today. Do so. I will. And if you should hear of anything very scandalous, I will communicate it to you. You will oblige me. And Danglars rushed out of the room and made but one leap into his coupé. And that concludes our 2 chapters for today. Whew. So, interesting. We have learned a bit more about the relationship between Monsieur and Madame, or the Baron and Baroness Danglars, especially their financial arrangements. Also we'll go back to that. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. And then also in his conversation afterwards with the Count of Monte Cristo, we learned a bit more about Fernand, now going as the Count of Morcerf. And it's interesting too, because Monte Cristo is now getting Danglars to do some of this digging into the past of Fernand. And also, I'm looking back at the notes. I was trying not to get myself too distracted or anything because I see the notes pop up on my phone while I'm reading. And Pam was asking a question about one of the words that I am sure I terribly mispronounced. And yeah, the French word for pregnant is enceinte, Enceinte. So I am sorry for anyone that actually remembers their French and knows how poorly I pronounced that. But basically, yeah, what they were saying earlier when they were saying that word was that, well, let's just go into it now, that Baroness Danglars, her previous husband, prior to her current husband, Baron Danglars, had been a Monsieur de Nargonne, and Monsieur de Nargonne had apparently killed himself after he realized that his wife gave birth after 6 months instead of the 9 that he thought she would need for her pregnancy. So he realized, so upon realizing that his wife was bearing the child of another man, that was when he had decided to kill himself. And so, and we of course know that that child was born of Monsieur de Villefort, and we know now from the conversation between husband and wife in the prior chapter that Baron Danglars also knows this secret, and that indeed he knows about pretty much all of the affairs, romantic and otherwise, of his wife over the past 16 years. So, exciting stuff. Thank you, Pam, for forgiving me on my poor pronunciation. I will try maybe next time to make the bigger gesture. I think I might have done it a couple times, but now the way I've got the camera set, you can't see me making the belly gesture. So, or you might just think I had a great lunch. Okay, sorry. Judy's asking, so they knew that she had a child. What did they think happened to it? Now, who's the they? So in this one, what Baroness Danglars thinks is that her child died at birth and that Villefort took it down to the garden and buried it. There is more coming about this in the next day or two. I was skipping ahead because I plan out for the week. Let me show you my little cheat sheet. I plan out for the week like which chapters we're going to read, how many pages it is, so I can get an idea of how long it's going to be, because I do try to keep it under an hour if possible. So I don't remember which day it is this week, but I know by the end of the week we're going to get a big reveal, and I think it's tomorrow, about what happened with the mystery of what happened to that child. So right now I'm just speculating on stuff that I don't exactly remember, so I'm going to seal my lips shut, except to have more tea, of course. I'm going to wish you guys a great day, and I am seriously looking forward to keep reading with you during the rest of the week. Thank you so much. And Pam says she thinks that word is pronounced ancient. Also, okay, so as long as we're talking about pronunciations, now I'm not going to close. Oh, 3:56, we're still under an hour, we're okay. I was going to say the wife, Baroness Danglars, her name is spelled Hermine, and so I think it was Hermine is how it would be, but I was thinking Hermione, from Harry Potter, and so that's what I was pronouncing with the E pronounced, but since there is no accent, it probably actually is Hermine, but Hermine is how I think I'm going to go for this, unless anyone has a serious objection, in which case I'll do the proper pronunciation of Hermine from now on. But I kind of like Hermine because it makes me think of Hermione. All right, so now, on that little odd tangent about pronunciations and names and crossing English and French pronunciations and two very distinct stories, the Count of Monte Cristo and the World of Hogwarts, I will say goodbye to you guys until tomorrow. Adieu, mes amis. Bye.